Hi, everyone, and I hope we have all our panelists with us. I can see Somsuvra.
Yes, all of them are with us.
Okay. Could we?
I'm
would the three of
spotlighting.
you all?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, Anjali. Hi, Somsuvra.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Pratiksha.
Jonathan. Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Okay, so
everyone.
thanks for being here with us. So a brief introduction to our three very fantastic guests leading even better organizations. So the purpose that the three of them are here is that all of them offer a very unique perspective and insight into the whole sector. And you'll see soon enough, right? So for instance, the Akanksha Foundation has been leading school transformation and shaping the education sector for nearly 30 years now. Just the duration with which they've been engaged in the sector itself has been fantastic in seeing so many organizations, even like that of Teach for India, start after their formation, right? And we'll be able to offer fantastic insights into leadership and into grassroots school transformation. On the other hand, we have Central Square Foundation that takes a policy and advocacy perspective to school transformation and shaping the education sector. They not only implement certain programs, but help organize the sector through the various innovations, through the various reports that they put out. And in fact, Central Square Foundation was one of the first organizations to put out sector report on low-fee private schools, right? We have then Anjali with us, and she is from Mantra4Change. Mantra4Change is a relatively young organization compared to the other two, but has been fantastic and extremely rapid in bringing about school transformation at various levels. They started off with a program called STEP, which then slowly grew into influencing not only low-fee private schools, but government schools, school boards, and state governments, etc. They also have an incubator that incubates different organizations and helps speed up this rapid transformation process. So I am going to do quite a terrible job at introducing their organizations for them. So rather we'll pass the mic over to the three of you all. Feel free to take your time, approximately 10 minutes, to walk us through what your organization does, your role in the organization, and very specific things that you've noticed that will be helpful for teachers and school leaders who are preparing to get back to school. Over to you, Somsuvra.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really excited to be here, and I must sincerely appreciate all the teachers that have been here the last hour. Sincerely appreciate all the teachers who put up the poems, very heartfelt poems. To introduce Akanksha Foundation, I think as Jonathan mentioned, we have been in the education sector for the last 3 decades. We are in our 30th year, and Akanksha started off as after-school centers by 𝘏𝘰𝘱𝘦 Mistry. So it was a very informal setup where we got students from the underserved communities into after-school learning centers, and where they taught them not specific structured subjects, but more around life skills, etc. And slowly over the year, we realized that सिर्फ after school center से कहीं better है. Sorry, just interrupting. Is it okay if I mix it in Hindi and English? Is that okay? I think. Okay. So we realized that सिर्फ after school center से नहीं हो रहा है, and we need a more structured approach. And that's when we transitioned into the school model. So in 2007, around 14 years back, our first school started. And how we work is we work in a public-private partnership model where the schools are government schools. These are basically government schools. The infrastructure is provided by the government, the building, all the other utilities like electricity, water, etc. All the necessary items that the student needs like books, midday meals, everything is provided by the government. We provide the teachers, we pay the salary of the teachers, and we are funded in turn by corporates. There can be private companies, high net worth individuals. So that is the basic model of a school. At the core is the government, the municipal corporation, which provides the infrastructure. We are the partners, we are the like teaching partners. We provide the teachers, the management, day-to-day management of the school, and our corporates and HNIs are our funding partners. In this model, we have around 21 schools We have 10 schools in Mumbai and 11 schools in Pune. We work with 4 municipal corporations, the Pune Municipal Corporation, Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation, the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, and the Navi Mumbai Municipal Corporation. We are soon transitioning into Nagpur, where we are opening 6 more schools in a similar model. And one good aspect of Nagpur is that the government is now not only providing the infrastructure, but they're also providing some part of the cost. So they will be sharing 55% of our HR cost with us, which is a model that we want to promote. We want the government to be accountable for the school systems. So that has been Akanksha's journey overall. And if I have to talk about numbers at present, we have close to 11,000 students and like managed by a staff of around 700 staff member and around 32 communities in Mumbai and Pune. The next question, my role, मैं क्या करता हूँ Akanksha में? I joined Akanksha around 2.5 years back. And I lead the operations in Pune. So I have the verticals of finance, compliance, procurement, and government relations with me. So I ensure that our schools run, they have the adequate amount of money, they are spending the money correctly, and with that we are partnering correctly with the government, and we are following all the compliance rules, and we are engaging in strategic partnerships with the government. So that is more or less my role. Now, before I go into what schools like teachers and HMs and principals should do, I think let us all introduce ourselves. So I would hand it over to my guests, Anjali or Pratiksha, whoever it is. Is that okay, Jonathan?
Oh yeah, for certain.
Yeah.
Pratiksha, we can go ahead.
Thank you, Somsuvra, for that brilliant instruction. While I was listening to you, I was like, okay, what am I going to share? How much am I going to share? Okay, these are the structure points. But thank you for giving it a frame. A little bit about my dilemma first. So I've just entered Central Sphere Foundation and I've started working with them. However, I'm just starting to understand the scale at which they're working. But the crux of my work for the last 5 years has been with Teach for India, where we worked, where I've very closely worked with Ahmedabad. So I'll be talking a little bit about that more than the work that CSF is doing right now. I hope in the next 1 year, I get to learn a lot about working at scale and come back again maybe next year and talk about that. Retracting my way back to Teach for India. So where I was working in Ahmedabad, Teach for India started in the year 2014, where we went into a couple of underserved communities, and we partnered with a few government schools and some low-income private schools where we placed teachers, and coincidentally, as we are inducting our teachers here, Teach for India is parallelly running their Summer Institute Day 1 today, and around 600 fellows are being welcomed into the movement right about now. Our work in the last few years, specifically last year, has been a lot about just ensuring all our children and their families are okay. We've worked in terms of ensuring they have access to learning, to moving towards quality learning, something that is something that Teach for India is doing continuously, is ensuring community and fellows work together hand in hand to ensure students need everything they deserve. And I think that thought itself makes me proud to call myself an alum of Teach for India. And in the process of the discussion, I think we'll talk a little bit more about what the organization has done. About my role, I was a 2016 alum in Teach for India Ahmedabad, and post my fellowship, I joined the program team there. And for the last 3 years, I was coaching fellows in the city. That's just been me. I'm a teacher at heart, and I love learning from teachers. So that's what brings me here as well. Thank you. I would actually invite Anjali to take it forward.
Thanks so much for sharing, Pratiksha. We'd love to hear from you, Anjali.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing, Pratiksha. And I would just like to thank the whole team of Barefoot for having me. And I think this is a great way to start the year. In spite of the fact that there's a pandemic and we're all like at home, it's brilliant how, with music and with a lot of poetry and just singing, we're kind of welcoming the whole new academic year with such enthusiasm. So it's just great to see that. Just to quickly introduce myself and the organization. So I'm from Mantra4Change, I'm Anjali. And just to give you a background of my career until now, I was an engineer, worked with Teach for India in 2014. So I've been teaching for 2 years and then joined Mantra from 2016 onwards. And ever since then, I've been with Mantra. I joined Mantra in the initial stages of the organization. So that was just, I think, around 1 or 2 years into when the organization had started. And it was started by another TFI alum as well. And initially, the idea was just to see how we can help schools become a space where education is being imparted in the best possible way. So that's when the program of STEP started, which is the School Transformation and Empowerment Program. And I started my journey there, working with a school, working with teachers in the school, coaching them, trying to learn from them and see how we could create those communities of practice where people can learn from each other. And from there we kind of worked to see how maybe we can work with a cluster of schools. And this was how the cluster program was born, which is called PACE. And from there, we went on to the state program, which is STRIDE. And so right now, I work with the STRIDE program in UP. So the UP operations is something that I lead. Mantra currently works in around 5 states. So we work in Punjab, UP, Assam, Bihar, and AP. So these are places that we have the state program running, and we continue to have the PACE program. And the STEP program is something that we work with the affordable private schools. So this is how like the whole journey of the organization is. And like what Jonathan was mentioning, we're trying to see how, we can help other early stage organizations also as we learn, to be able to learn with us, to be able to kind of grow with us, and help spread school transformation as fast as possible to all the students in the world. I mean, in at least India. So yeah, that's Mantra, and that's me. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. All the participants who are listening in on this, right? Something that's common between our 3 guests who've joined us is that the organizations work across different states and with a very wide variety of schools. So between the 3 of them, they've seen a lot. And as you frame questions, as you think of something that you'd like to ask them, keep in mind that they have a lot of exposure and a very wide variety of exposure. So I'll ask them a few questions and then we'll refer to the chat. Feel free to post any questions that you have for our guests and I will direct it towards them. So we'll start with you, Pratiksha. What's really interesting is that you have both the experience of working with Teach for India inside a classroom at the grassroots, and then with Central Square Foundation, which looks at things from a slightly system level lens or viewpoint, right? So I'd like to ask you, since schools should not fall into the trap of trying to shift things that were happening offline online, because things that were working well offline may not work well online, and things that were working poorly offline most definitely is going to not be successful online, right? But there are a lot of things that digital education or things by virtue of being online can offer. For example, access to volunteers, which has made it so much easier for people to volunteer because they don't have to travel to the school. So like that, what are some things that you've noticed which have worked well online and should be propagated?
Thank you for the question. I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of this is just how student and teacher partnerships have evolved this year because of the online way of teaching. And when I say this, a lot of examples of lesson plans or presentations being created by students to teach students has come up in the last year. I've seen where the teachers have just given, say, topics, and the students were like, okay, we'll just go, we will research, we will come and help our peers learn. Which used to be a dream, because just gathering resources would be such a huge task for our students sometimes, and they would be lost in the process. However, Google has just become their friend, and they have helped their teachers in turn. I think that is one thing that I feel should continue, even if we go back to offline way of learning. I think another big boon that our community has received is just the exposure we've been able to get to students. Like you just said, there's access to volunteers. There's also access to experts who are just in different Zoom rooms, and students could just go avail opportunities, talk to people from like people across sectors, ask their curious questions, and just bring all those learning back to classroom as well in discussions. I think the third thing that has been huge is just how students have created safe spaces of learning with each other in this online setup. I've seen a lot of say posts, and I've been a part of a few after school classes that students run on their own, because there's no requirement of like a physical space or anything. They just create their own Zoom links, and they're like, okay, math doubt solving class here, all of you just come. And sometimes the teachers are so happy sharing that, saying that, see, this is what grade 8 students are doing. And I'm like, yes, this is what they needed right now. So I think these have been three huge learnings of things that have been amplified by online way of learning. And I hope this continues in the many, many years to come.
Oh, honestly, thanks for sharing that. I can see the joy with which you talk about it, and that's absolutely contagious. Somsuvra, so Akanksha has been a leader in the education space for a very long time. And in fact, like you pointed out, they would use office spaces after the office is shut as schools, and were always focused on these very innovative ways of imparting education, right? It was so simple. All they had to do was ask someone to give an office space that was not being used after a particular time, and ended up getting access to it. So keeping that in mind, and how y'all have always been leaders in this space, could you share with us specific instances on how school leadership has been important during the pandemic, both at a school leader or principal level and at a teacher level?
Right. Thanks, Jonathan. I think one thing which we realized at the pandemic level very early on is that there was this huge shift to कि अभी online learning करना है and blended learning करना है, technology करना है, but जिन communities को हम सर्व करते हैं वहाँ पे digital infrastructure को acquire करना ही एक बहुत बड़ा problem था. Like online learning करे कैसे, या तो parent के पास उतना high end phone नहीं है, और अगर है भी तो उनके काम के लिए लग रहा है. So I think what Akanksha focused on in the beginning part of the first 3-4 months is to ensure कि ठीक है academic activities तो जैसी चल रही है, but how do we ensure कि बच्चों का well-being या families का well-being like रहे. And उसके लिए हमने कई projects शुरू किए, talk about that later. But to your question कि school leadership कैसे काम आया, so Akanksha का school leadership or that school team is the contact between the community and the central team. तो हमारे सेंट्रल टीम से जो भी प्रोजेक्ट्स आते हैं दे गो थ्रू द स्कूल टू द कम्युनिटी. उनका कंसेप्चुअलाइजेशन या उनका जो रिसोर्सिंग है या फंडिंग है दैट हैपेंस एट द सेंट्रल लेवल, बट वी डोंट डायरेक्टली हैव. सॉरी, इज माय वॉइस नॉट क्लियर?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. So whatever conceptualization and funding happens, it happens at the central level, but it goes through the school. And the school leader is an extremely important part, because he or she knows what are the critical areas, like what are the critical areas that the school needs support in. So for example, we initially launched a food grain distribution project, because most of the families that we serve to, they either had lost their jobs or lost their source of income, and we realized that most people did not have access to basic grocery. तो हमारे कुछ स्कूल लीडर्स ने कहा कि आप अगर ग्रोसरी कुछ कर सकते हो, then do it, and so we started that project. Similarly, some of the school leaders said that hey, grocery is good, but we are feeling a need for a lot of medical welfare things that need to be done. तो like हमारे community में बहुत सारे केसेस आ रहे कोविड के, तो क्या आप उसके लिए कुछ कर सकते हो? सो ये जो ग्राउंड लेवल का डेटा है ये हमें स्कूल से मिलता है, एंड आई थिंक स्कूल लीडर इज द बेस्ट पर्सन टू टेल अस कि स्कूल को क्या चाहिए, एंड जब तक वो रियल डेटा हम तक नहीं आता हम वो प्रोजेक्ट इनिशियलाइज नहीं कर सकते. जैसे बहुत रिसेंटली लास्ट सैटरडे हमने एक वैक्सीनेशन कैंप शुरू किया अपने पेरेंट्स के लिए, क्योंकि वो इस लाइक पेरेंट आवर स्कूल्स आर सेइंग कि दैट इज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट नीड्स. Similarly, some other school leader is saying that hey, vaccination तो तुम लोग करा लोगे, but there is a lot of vaccination hesitancy in my community. मेरे कम्युनिटी के जो लोग हैं वो वैक्सीन लेना ही नहीं चाहते. कैन यू डू समथिंग अबाउट इट? सो वी आर आल्सो स्टार्टिंग अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम. सो आई थिंक स्कूल लीडरशिप वहां पे बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. Regarding teachers, I think teachers, like again, when the entire thing shifted from the physical classroom to the online classroom, teachers थे जिनको like almost overnight नई चीजें सीखनी पड़ी, जिन्होंने शायद कभी इसके पहले like उनका टेक्नोलॉजी यूज लिमिटेड था, प्रोजेक्टर्स तक या फॉर एग्जांपल एक लैपटॉप तक उनको मेंटीमीटर यूज करना पड़ रहा है, जूम का अटेंडेंस फीचर यूज करना पड़ रहा है, एंड लॉट मोर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड टूल्स यूज करना पड़ रहा है. सो आई थिंक टीचर्स का जो लर्निंग पोटेंशियल है वो बहुत सामने है, एंड ऑल आवर टीचर्स वर अप टू इट. Like जितनी जल्दी उन्होंने सीखा, that was commendable, and I am not saying Akanksha teachers across the country and the world have done that. And I think एक और चीज जो बहुत important है, like जो टीचर्स या जो स्कूल का स्पेसिफिकली काम आया, कि हमने देखा कि स्कूल का जो रोल है वो सडनली चेंज हो गया. लाइक स्कूल एक सिर्फ वो जगह नहीं थी जो 8 आवर्स बच्चों को पढ़ा रही है, कुछ स्पोर्ट्स करा रही है या कुछ आर्ट्स करा रही है. स्कूल एक सर्विस डिलीवरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बन गया. लाइक हम वैक्सीन का अवेयरनेस करा रहे हैं, हम वैक्सीन दे रहे हैं, हम फूड ग्रेन्स दे रहे हैं, हमने स्टेशनरी दिया. इनफैक्ट हमने जब गवर्नमेंट ने एक स्कीम लाया था कि राशन शॉप्स में फ्री राशन मिलेगा, a lot of our parents complained कि वो एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हो पा रहा, तो हमने गवर्नमेंट चैनल्स में कंप्लेंट किया कि देखो ये नहीं हो पा रहा है, वो नहीं हो पा रहा है. हमने पेरेंट्स तक स्कीम्स पहुंचाई. तो स्कूल का जो रोल है वो फंडामेंटली चेंज हो गया, कि अब ये एक वो जगह नहीं है जहाँ पे सिर्फ बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं घर जा रहे हैं, क्योंकि बाकी चीजें अगर सेट नहीं है तो वो पढ़ के भी कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. एंड इस पूरे चीज में टीचर्स प्ले वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल, बिकॉज स्कूल लीडर्स से भी जो ज्यादा क्लोजली कनेक्टेड है बच्चों से वो है हमारे टीचर्स, सोशल वर्कर्स और हमारा एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्टाफ. तो कोई भी प्रोग्राम जो हम एग्जीक्यूट करते हैं वो एग्जीक्यूशन लेकिन एट द एंड ऑफ द डे होता है टीचर्स के थ्रू. जैसे मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जाम्पल देना चाहूंगा. हम आकांक्षा ने एक प्रोग्राम शुरू किया था जहां पे हम हर बच्चे से वेलबींग कॉल करते थे. लाइक वी गिव इट द नेम वेलबींग कॉल. बच्चे से एक छोटा सा 8-10 मिनट का कॉन्वर्सेशन करते थे एंड उससे जानते थे कि क्या दिक्कतें हैं क्या नहीं है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली काफी सारे चाइल्ड सेक्सुअल अब्यूज के केसेस बाहर आए, उससे फैमिली अब्यूज के बाहर आए. एंड our teachers together from the month of I think May till December they cumulatively made 60,000 such phone calls. and उससे हमें बहुत सारी important information and intelligence पता चली जिससे हमने decision लिया. So I think like these two pieces are extremely important. I mean इनके बिना हम survive ही नहीं कर पाएंगे. And these are the people who give us the intelligence to operate. Like अगर ये intelligence या information हमारे पास नहीं रहेगी then it is like we can't do anything actually. So yeah, Jonathan, like they are the most important pillars of the school system right now.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I completely resonate how schools have become much more than a school, right? There's no term for what a school is right now. It's a community-based organization. It's a school. It's a service delivery organization. It's full of complexity. And I think leadership is more important now more than ever, right? Because it's not tied to any system that is used to dealing with the amount of services that the school needs to provide. Yeah. So Anjali, our next question is for you. And so very interestingly, Mantra prides itself on innovation, right? Experimenting new things in school, having access to a lot of organizations, and they make it their point to find out what others are doing so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, but can move forward through collaboration. So with that as context, what are some processes that you realized worked well during the pandemic, which need to stay in schools even after the pandemic?
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I think I would like to start by talking about a project that we had undertaken about having students do project-based learning in the schools. And this was a project that was done across all the rural and tribal collectives that we had formed. So there were a lot of organizations in the rural and tribal areas with whom we had partnered. And we had also partnered with this organization called Education Above All from, they were from the UAE. And so we, yes, we had gotten them and the people from the rural tribal collective and Mantra. So we all came together to kind of design project-based learning modules for students who could, can you hear me? All right, yeah. Who could, take up these projects and do it in their houses without having too much technology, without having too much access to technology. So it would be something like creating a pop-up restaurant in their house, or it would be something like creating a shadow play, a whole play on that, or creating certain ID cards for everybody in the house. So through that, they learn different concepts. So through the pop-up restaurant, they would learn how to make a menu. And in that menu making process, they would learn a lot of maths concepts. And similarly, there would be certain, smaller concepts that was embedded in each of these projects, which they would learn through doing throughout the day, or it would be like a week-long activity, which didn't need a lot of, screen time or for them to have access to devices as such. So such processes, I think, should continue, those kind of innovative processes should continue. We also saw that these kind of projects got painted on walls in the villages, where people would just, as they're walking, they would see certain projects on the walls. And people also started sending out these projects as newspaper clips. So it was just the idea of project-based learning, but how it got implemented was something that people just kind of owned up and took it in their own ways. Like it got contextualized according to the kind of places where people were finding different difficulties. So we also saw people using ration shops to send these, activities as worksheets. So that's something that I think, really needs to stay even after the whole pandemic situation, or, when students do come back to school. There was also this study which spoke about how we are not really enabling the students to learn even after school hours. And that's something I think got me thinking to say that how do we enable students to continue learning on their own? And I think these kind of things help. That's one thing. The other thing that I would want to just quickly talk about is a space that we had created for schools to be encouraged to think about these solutions. So like what Somsuvra was talking, it's already in the schools. Like a lot of solutions are already in the schools, and all we need to do is give them this platform, give them this space to kind of talk about it, to kind of come together, to think things through and put it up on a platform. And we had designed this platform for schools to come up and discuss their ideas. So we'd given it the name Micro Innovations, and we had partnered with schools from NISA and also with a partner organization of Andhra Pradesh Social Welfare Residential Schools, and also our schools in Bangalore, the affordable private schools in Bangalore. And we had seen that schools come up with amazing ideas. All you need to do is give them a platform to talk about it, to share about it, and also encourage them to say that, let's talk about it. Let's put it out there in the, in like the public domain for people to know about it and also kind of learn from each other. And I think that's something that's been really useful, to say that the answers are with you. We will encourage you. We will try to kind of help you document it in a better way, help you project it out in a better way, or maybe think through a few things so that it can be a little more structured. And we will also help you create this community, which will help you learn from somebody else who's in the same context, or from somebody else who's in a completely different context, but maybe there are a few things that you can take from there. So that is something that I think, really worked with respect to the innovative practices that I saw come out during this whole period. Yeah.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing that. Two things particularly stand out about what you said is, one, the project-based learning approach, right? It's such a brilliant way to visualize learning because there's a tangible outcome. People don't need to see whether a child has met their child developmental domain, but rather is able to see that the child can perform this function out there in society, right? And that's something I really, really appreciate. And the second was how, especially during times like this, community becomes so important. And instead of waiting for a top-down approach, a guideline or a manual or something official to come out, how there's so much that we can learn from each other. And that's great. If you could post the name of the platform on the chat, I think that would be super helpful for the principals with us.
Sure, definitely. I can put that up in the chat. Yeah.
Sure. Somsuvra, we have a question for you. One is, how scalable is the PPP model? And the second is, how did you approach the whole challenge of child abuse? How did you understand that it existed? And was this project of wellness led by the organization or the school leaders?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So thank you, Ishita, for the question. I'm going to answer your question first. So this was a simple questionnaire that was prepared by our counselors. And during this 15-minute call, the counselor, like the teacher, used to ask the question. And how this worked is, in Akanksha schools, there is a system called advisory. So irrespective of the teacher, like irrespective of the class that you are in, each teacher has a set of 15 students who they closely work with, like they have circle time, it's a space to build life skills and sort. So these are like your advisory circle, and you spend a lot of time with them post school, before school. So this advisor used to call the 15 students and fill a Google form, simple Google form based on that. And if the school, and based upon these questions, if the advisor felt that there was something that was amiss or she was doubtful, she used to raise a red flag, which was an automated thing. And that red flag used to alert a counselor attached to that school. So we have around 2 counselors per school. And that counselor would then do a follow-up conversation and ascertain whether it existed or not. And then the legal formalities would follow if there was something legal to be followed. And this was mainly undertaken by like the school staff, like basically the teachers. As I said, the teachers are the advisors, and they used to make the phone calls. They used to alert it to the counselors, and if there was some legal implication, then the operations team or the central compliance team would take. And not only the child abuse, we used to get alerts about the need for ration or anything in a certain way so that we could plan for it. I hope that answers your question, Ishita. If you have any follow-up question, do put it. Regarding the scalability of the PPP model, so Rohan, this is my fundamental belief, and again, you can disagree with it, कि non-profits जो हैं, उनका काम लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि हमने कोई मॉडल का सक्सेस प्रूफ किया और उसको हमने फट से स्केल कर दिया. Like this is not a corporate or not a product कि मैं expand कर रहा हूँ. मेरा एम है कि एक सर्टन मॉडल को कैसे काम कर रहा है वो मैं दिखाऊं. जैसे हमारा जो लोकस ऑफ कंट्रोल है, आई नो इट्स ओनली 21 + 6 अभी 27 स्कूल्स है. 27 schools is far easier to manage than even when I take, say, municipal corporation or a district. But the point is that, my point that I'm trying to prove is कि आप अगर एक साथ 800 स्कूल मैनेज करने जाओगे तो प्रॉब्लम होगी. आपको उन्हें चंक्स में ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा, जो हमारा नया NEP भी बताता है. If you look at the NEP right now, it talks about clusters of schools which are not more than 20-25 schools. So what we are trying to advocate through our model or the PPP model is that don't try to manage 800 schools together. Try to manage 25 schools, outsource them to a certain organization which you believe fills the parameter. And I will give you a short example here, Rohan. पहले जब आकांक्षा के initial schools खुलते थे, तब ये basically invitation पे होते थे कि some of our board members know the mayor ने बोला आकांक्षा please open the school, आकांक्षा गया, MOU बनाया, हो गया. Right now the process is a lot more formalized. And I can give you the example of Nagpur because I am leading it. Nagpur में actually tender निकला था. There was a request for proposal. Nagpur Municipal Corporation ने tender invite किया था कि जो भी school groups है, you submit proposals and जैसा आप लोगों का टेंडर का जो क्वालिटी होगा उस हिसाब से हम अवार्ड करेंगे. So it was a proper formal process, and Akanksha fortunately, like, we succeeded and we won the tender and we are opening the school. So it has been formalized a lot right now. And overall the point, Rohan, is कि we are trying to advocate that look at smaller clusters of schools. And we are not the only example, actually. There is another system that exists in Pune. It is called the IT schools. They mainly work in the secondary grades. They are also an extremely successful model. They have 11 schools right now in Pune and I think 2 in Delhi. So that basically is the model, Rohan. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was very beautifully put. And I do think that models of scale just need to be approached differently in the not-for-profit sector. For example, I mean, there's a very common example saying that, and if you look at an elephant and you look at an animal that's half the size of an elephant, everything is not half. I mean, the head is not half, the circumference of the feet are not half, the size of the heart is not half, because every component needs to change in a different proportion when it's being scaled. And I think that's important to call out. What components can scale, what can be a model for others, and essentially what can we learn? How can we have this decentralized way of scaling as well, whereas Somsuvra said, we don't look at managing 800 schools at once. It's physically not possible. How can we look into clusters? And I think that's what Mantra is doing, and Anjali might have some knowledge about with respect to their program PACE, which looks at clusters of school transformation.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
Yeah, would you like to share some insights on that, Anjali?
Sure. Yeah, I think I can just quickly add, I think, to what Jonathan was saying, we do look at, smaller, the clusters are a group of around 20-ish schools right now. And we do look at a piece that we would scale across the cluster. Like say if it's a learning circle model where we want schools to come together on say a monthly basis to discuss issues that are going on in the school. That is the piece that we would try and scale across. And that's something that we keep building on. And it's almost like a +1 model that we keep trying to do, where every intervention is broken down to say that can we keep adding like a +1 to any model that we're doing across any intervention that we're doing across the cluster. And that keeps building. And the building may look different in different clusters, but at least the essence is something that we're trying to see if it can be across the schools in the cluster in that small incremental values. So yeah, that's something that I think we're just adding to what Jonathan.
Thanks for sharing that. Pratya has a question for you, Pratiksha, and in fact, this is CSF's speciality. How can we include parents in the community in school transformation, specifically for foundational literacy and numeracy?
That's exactly a question I'm searching answers for right now in my role. And I think one of the easiest ways I feel what I'm learning about inclusivity with parents and community is making them partners in the design itself. What I'm learning about like a familiar language, I would not say mother tongue, but a language that the child is familiar in. When people around the child talks and create, say, learning modules or you say activities in the same language, the child is learning throughout the day. There's no concept of, okay, 6 hours of schooling and then I have to do something else. When you include a community, when you include parents and you give them that onus of saying that all of us are going to work on this together, like we say, it takes a village to raise a child. I think this model with foundational literacy and numeracy actually is about the community coming together and taking the child forward in their learning. I think another way that I feel the inclusivity factor of parents and community can be in, particularly in government school, is the efficiency of the groups that are created with parents and say SMCs, which we commonly call here as well, where we see that if parents are designated with a certain kind of role, or if the school is coming up with, say, projects or activities around FLN specifically, how might they invite parents to do the entire, like monitoring, evaluation, design, hosting, etc. And I think that just, I feel empowers parents more than anything. And I think just that push, I feel is very, very important for them, because what they see at that end is, oh, we are partners in our child's education. And I've heard parents say that whenever they've been able to give a little input in their child's learning, they felt very proud of their contribution. So I think that is another way I feel parents can be invited to own FLN for the students, for the children.
I love how you point out that the family and foundational literacy and numeracy are quite inseparable, right? And that's where the child gets so much of exposure.
It's also from experience, Jonathan. Like I remember, I hail from Odisha, so I remember how easy it was for me to read and learn Odia text. I was struggling with English initially because that was a foreign language, and no one at home would talk in English that fluently the way everyone around me would speak in Odia. And now I'm realizing that that's exactly what we need to do. And at times when I was a teacher, I've known the struggle I felt when I had to tell my child, please can you not speak in Urdu or in Gujarati, and can you try and say this in English? I could see their struggle very, very clearly, because they would just not understand why it is not Billy and why is it cat. But I see when you tell them that Billy and cat is not different, just two different words, you call it Billy if you want to, if that helps you right now, and get the family together to make them understand what are different languages that can be used to just talk about a cat. I think that also builds that confidence in the child, saying that I'm not wrong if I'm speaking in a language that I'm familiar with. Yes, I have to learn many more languages because this is a big wide world, and I will take that forward for my own learning. So I think that's where it is.
That's so profound. Like, it's absolutely fantastic. Leading from here, is there any question that you have, Pratiksha, for the other panelists?
I had one. I've written one. Okay, and Anjali, Somsuvra, just feel free to answer this. What I've learned in the last 1 year, I know Akanksha has been a pioneer since 3 decades now, and we've been inspired a lot with the work that Akanksha does with teachers. And Anjali, I've spoken to a couple of my friends who work with Mantra, and they talk a lot about how schools feel supported with the work that Mantra does with them. I'm taking it a layer deeper into the grassroots where our teachers work, right? And just the last year, I know has been it has been a huge sense of loss, a huge sense of I don't know, derailment or chaotic thinking process of saying that, okay, my normal has changed. As a teacher, something that I would do for years together is not the normal anymore. And what I've learned is that it has impacted their mental well-being to some extent. If I could learn from the two of you, anything that your organizations or you've learned and heard people do around just supporting teachers with their mental well-being on ground, I would love to hear that and just take that in my work as well. Thank
you. Either of you all feel free to go ahead and answer that.
I think I could attempt it. Yeah, I think this has definitely been something that, a lot of our teachers have been struggling with, and even the school leaders have been struggling with this. And it's been very, very difficult on them. A few things that we did try out with respect to the teachers and the school leaders was we did have a session with them about just the basics of well-being and mental well-being. And we did have like an external organization come and do a quick session for them in the beginning of the last wave. So that's something that we did do. Another thing was, there are few things which are just basics for the teachers and for the school leaders, like what I think somebody was mentioning, the ration delivery, or just in terms of, they're not able to get their salaries on time. Even that's becoming a hurdle. So can those kind of basics be met is something that we tried to see, so that on that, then the well-being can be built. So we did have certain, places from where we tried to kind of arrange for these ration packages, and also look at how, salary can be supported from our side as well. This was something that we tried for a while. The other thing was also to say, in this time, how are we also supporting them to take classes for the students, like, because that was also getting very difficult for them, saying that this is a completely new medium, I don't know how to use all these new things that are coming up. So even just to kind of calm them down and have this space where they can learn all of these new practices, new tools that they are kind of using on a daily basis now to teach and to reach out to students, that is something that I think we kind of focused on. And we also had a lot of sessions with school leaders to try and think of, from their side, like from a school leader perspective, what could certain strategies be to kind of ease out the stress on teachers, given that this is a very difficult time. So I think just having those conversations also really helped, just to kind of acknowledge the fact that, okay, this is a difficult time, and let's not overburden or over stress out the teachers at this point, and also look at their basics at that point. So yeah, these two things are something that we tried out. Yeah, I think that's from me.
Yeah, I think Pratiksha, I think mental well-being was something we realized that it has immense importance, and I think we have always maintained that teachers undergo a lot of secondary trauma in school. Like primary trauma agar nahi bhi hota hai, to just hearing about a child go through difficult circumstances, when you're hearing that a child or his family or her family doesn't have enough to eat or is going through circumstances which are not conducive, that is secondary trauma. We did a lot of, like Akanksha tried to incorporate a lot of different initiatives. I will tell you some of the structural initiatives we did. We reduced the working hours firstly. We took Saturday out of the working day. जहाँ पे हमारे synchronous classes होते थे, like live classes होते थे, उनका हमने maximum दिन में 4 hours बोला कि you cannot have more than 4 hours of classes synchronous. Asynchronous can be another additional 2 hours. Apart from that, the HR initiated a lot of different kind of leaves. There was COVID leave, COVID bereavement leave, COVID care leaves. So if you have somebody in the family who is suffering from COVID, you can take a leave to take care of them. There were financial incentives, like you can like get some amount of money if you are taking care of COVID, like COVID related cases. We increased our health insurance to include COVID, increased the limit for that. We incorporated D&Ds, which were do not disturb days. These were specifically long weekends where we looked at if there was a Friday holiday or a Monday was a holiday. So we used to give the Friday or the Monday holiday. So there was 4 days of no communication. It was mandated by like the top leadership that there would be no communication during those 3-4 days. And I think one of the things that we did was, especially last year, 2020, there was a cash crunch that was happening. So we split our salary into half. So each person was getting half of their salary twice in a month. So you get one salary on first and another half of the salary on 15th. Reduce the cash crunch a little bit. And apart from that, these were the structural initiatives. Some other initiatives where we partnered with a few organizations which provided over the phone counseling. Unfortunately, did not work out very well. Like not a lot of our people used it. What worked out was, just as Anjali said, just having the conversations. So our HR took a massive initiative of having conversations with each of the 720 people that was there in the organization. It took 3 months to complete them. But I think that helped a lot. There were like 1.5 hour conversations, and people spoke out what they needed, what they were happy about. So yeah, these were some of the things that we tried to help our employees with.
Those are such
Thank you so much for
interesting
sharing.
initiatives.
I have a list of things that I think I am taking away from here. So thank you.
Yeah, honestly, as the two of you all were speaking, I was just making notes saying got to do this at Barefoot as well. So before we part, I have just one more question for all of y'all, and feel free to unmute and go for it. So if the school was to hire an additional resource person, right? Just one, what do you think the job description should be? So you can take a minute to think on it. We've been hearing a lot from during the pandemic, how the role of teachers have changed to facilitators. There needs to be mental health support that is provided to students as well. Schools need to be entrepreneurial in their thought if they want to survive a crisis. And we have so much going around. So just given the context that the three of you all occupy, what would the job description of that additional resource person be?
I have my answer. And that comes from the dirt I've seen on ground and how that has impacted the work that fellows did. I think the role would be someone who handles tech and admin related work with the teachers. And what that would do, would cut the work of the teachers into half, and they'd have more time to actually teach and prep for their classrooms, support their children. And this comes from a place where I've seen a lot of my fellows last year and other teachers across also feel the pressure of collecting so much data, because that was required at that point of time, be it ration gaya hai ki nahi, access mila hai ki nahi, attendance hai ki nahi. So all these things which are needed were being collected by teachers, and it was eating into their teaching hours a lot of times. So if we have someone who can take care of that, our teachers will be happily investing their time in teaching. And yeah, that's the goal.
I can go next. I think if we have to hire anyone in the school, I would say the only job description that I would give is like be what the child needs you to be. I mean, and I'm telling this because we have had teachers teaching 5 hours in a week, but making calls for like 15 hours in a week. We have had our support staff teach support staff like who are responsible for government relations. I personally taught in a school, and I'm not even like linked to any school. I'm a central staff member. So I think the only job description I would give is like be what the kid needs you to be, what the child needs you to be. It can be a tech support person, it can be an admin support person, it can be simply data entry. And I think that what makes the job so difficult. Like we are talking about around 50 skills in one single person. Like it's difficult, it's crazily difficult, but that would be my job description.
I think it's becoming really hard for me to think this through, but I think I definitely agree with what Somsuvra and Pratiksha mentioned. But I also think there should be somebody who kind of can, zoom out and see how much the teachers need to learn, the teachers need to kind of churn out and kind of help ease things out or like spread things out, and be like a voice to either the management or like the government, somebody who's like a link to kind of understand, okay, what the teachers are going through and be able to communicate that, so that teachers also are, able to do the best they can as teachers teaching the students, while, whoever is say either in the management or in the government department roles, they have like a very clear view of what is happening on the ground and what is required on the ground. So if there can be this one person who is very clearly communicating between these two entities, I think that's something that would really help ease out a lot of things. Yeah.
Those are such interesting job descriptions. Being a bridge, being tech and admin support, and being a free-floating person who...
Yeah, we need all these three. I don't think with one it's going to work. We need three people.
Perhaps a bunch of schools could get together and hire all three people and circulate them between the...
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Schools. There are more questions coming in at me, but I think that we're running out of time. Would the three of you all mind sharing your email addresses or any platform through which the school leaders and teachers could get in touch with you all?
Yeah, no problem. I think that can be shared.
Oh, fantastic. Please post it on the chat.
Can I'm sorry to just come off mute abruptly, but can I still ask my question? Just wanted an opinion of that.
Soumya, just a second. Soumya, do we have time?
Yeah, I mean, we can take one more, I guess. Ishita's question.
Okay, sure. That sounds great. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, just I wanted to ask the panel about their opinion on how we could continue, if we could blended learning, and how we could do that as a school structure even after pandemic is mitigated. Because like in NEP 2020, it's nothing mentioned about blended learning, right? So it's already in our school structures, and if we could continue that even after the pandemic is under control. What's any opinion?
Sure. Feel free to use the chat, unmute and talk, everything together. Go for it.
Yeah, I think I can just quickly.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, just a quick thought on that. We did try this out in some of our schools in AP Soros, in fact, like in the AP Social Welfare Department, where schools had started reopening, and it's a residential school. So kids started coming back to the residential schools, and we had started this out, at least in that gap between like the first wave and the second wave, when there were students. We had started this out where we would project, like the teachers would project the videos or the snippets of how to conduct that whole project-based learning approach, and students would go back and do it. They would do it in their hostels, or they would do it like in the school areas itself, and that's something that we saw really helped students kind of pick up those smaller nuanced skills. I think it's definitely doable. It's only about how do we structure this and how do we help people in the system imagine it. I think that's where the gap is. Everybody wants to do it, believe me. Like teachers are very happy to do it. School leaders are very happy to give the students this space. But that blockage of how do we imagine this? I think that's where, if we can help them out with that, because it takes a lot of effort to operationalize ideas. And I think that barrier, if it can be removed, I think it can definitely be done across, even after the pandemic. That's just my 2 cents. Somsuvra, I think
Love the examples. Somsuvra, would you like to share?
Sure. Thanks, Anjali. I think that was very insightful. So, Ishita, I think our understanding from this entire experience of blended learning has been like we provided tabs to grades, like students from grade 7 to 10, not going into how effective they were or how not effective they were. But I think it's very important to understand why are you using the blended learning. Most, like in our country, unfortunately, what happens, and I have seen this in my experience in the fellowship, is we generally take a resource and then build the program around it. कि पहले लाइब्रेरी बना दिया, पहले टेक्नोलॉजी खरीद लिया, अब देखते हैं कि इसको स्कूल प्रोग्राम में कैसे फिट करें. That is where there is a high chance blended learning can go into. Blended learning does not mean technology. Like I know of schools which use blended learning without even a single computer. So you need to very clearly identify कि आप blended learning क्यों use करना चाह रहे हो. क्या operational efficiency के लिए that I want to reduce my cost so that या क्या मैं स्टूडेंट्स को ज्यादा देर एंगेज करना चाहता हूँ, लाइक ठीक है स्कूल 6 hours का, घर में जाके और 6 hours. So you need to very clearly identify that and then see that whether you can incorporate blended learning. I feel that the kids that we serve, like Akanksha or Teach for India, they serve, blended learning is still 2 or 3 steps ahead, because blended learning requires certain amount of skills to access the learning. Like उस learning को cognitively access करने के लिए कुछ skills चाहिए, और उन skills को build करने के लिए आपको पहले school चाहिए. Like for example, self-learning and research. That is a skill. It is difficult to develop. Like we need the kid in the school for like 6-7 hours, and then maybe he can go and access a resource or access a text or access an article and उसका sense बनाए. So I feel you need to define the purpose कि आपको blended learning क्यों चाहिए, and be very careful that you are not building a program around the resource, but rather building the resource around the program. So yeah, that is my opinion on it.
Thank you all for sharing. I wish this conversation could go on for much longer. I, for one, will definitely be calling you all up later to ask more about all these examples. It was really lovely being a part of this panel discussion with all of you all. And Pratyaya or Soumya, would you all like to close the session?